And it goes into this. Today, it's about the pivot. When life forces you to reroute. When life forces you to reroute, we call it the pivot, we call it redirection, we call all these things. And it starts off with the power of the pivot. When life forces you to reroute. And we're going to touch on what is a pivot, when life forces to reroute, the power behind it, embracing the pivot, and name your pivot. You know, the pivot is that unexpected turn you have to take. When you're going down this road and you're doing everything you think you be doing, and then one day something clicks and says, "Woo, I need to do this a little differently." And a lot of times we always look at it as a change, but sometimes when people hear change, barriers come up. They get scared because change is a word that a lot of people don't want to hear. So they integrated this pivot, where you pivot from the direction you're going to a different. I know in basketball, you got your pivot foot. When you're trying to break somebody down, you that's another conversation, but let me get into this. An unexpected turn, a detour. This ain't how I planned it moment. The one that we get often when we make a decision and be like, I got to make a different move. So what is a pivot really? A pivot isn't a breakdown, it's a redirection. It's life tapping you on the shoulder saying, that ain't the way no more. Come on, let's go this way. You know that thing up on your shoulder that tells you this ain't the move? Yeah. You thought the job, the relationship, the path you were on was it. You thought this was it. This is the job I've always dreamed of and everything. And then you get in there and it's like, this job has exhausted all possibilities that I thought would present itself. I need to pivot. Because life says, nope, change plans. Change plans. I got to redirect which way I'm going, what I'm going, how I'm going about it. And it's not that anything is a failure. It's just that you recognize that this is not the direction that I thought I was going to be able to go in. And now I need to pivot for a new direction. Change course. It's just like when you set goals. Sometimes you set goals and you have to reimagine those goals in a different light in order for you to still be able to be on track. Here's the thing. As I said, it feels like failure at first when it's actually not. It's a redirection, a rerouting, a pivot. Why? Because we love control. We have to be in control. And when we're not in control, we think that we failed at something. We love structure. We love knowing what's next. But growth rarely comes from comfort zones. I always say this phrase, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're comfortable in the places you go each and every day, you need to find a place where you're uncomfortable in order for you to grow. In order for you to grow, you got to be uncomfortable sometimes. Growth lives in a pivot. When life forces the reroute, let's be real. Let's just be straight up honest. Sometimes the pivot ain't pretty. The pivot is not pretty. So sometimes we got to step back for a minute when that pivot ain't pretty and say, okay, what now? What now? You lose your job. You go through a relationship that you've been in 10, 20, 5 years, 1 month, whatever. It ends. Your health. Let's talk about the health. Your health shifts. You're very healthy and everything. You're doing everything you need to do. Then something pops up that unexpected because you're taking care of everything. But it's just like in your car. Let me break it down like this. Just like in your car. Everything's running fine. And all of a sudden, one of them lights come on. And you're wondering what's going on, what's happening. And the extent of your worry has grown so large. But when you realize what went wrong, it's something the size of a gasket. Something the size of a gasket, because we go to the extreme of thinking that everything's falling apart. Everything's falling apart. The dream gets delayed. I was listening to something the other day and said, what's delayed is not denied. What's delayed is not denied. That's saying that even though what you want in life may not come today, that doesn't mean it won't come at a certain time. You have to prepare yourself for those things that you're working for and that you want to achieve. What's delayed is not denied. If it's denied, it's because you chose not to continue pursuing what you want. A delay could be a good thing, especially when you're talking about that pivot. The door you prayed would open, slam shut. Now, we've all had this where you go to a job interview, you know this door's open, everything, and you didn't get the job. Don't give up. Pivot. If you didn't get that job, what went wrong? Why didn't they want you? You know, I say it that way. Well, they don't want me. Why didn't they want you? What do you need to change? What you need to redirect? Maybe you need to put your energy somewhere else. Maybe it's time for you to look outside the box at doing something different than what you've been doing for so long. Those are those pivot moments. Those are those pivot moments. The rerouting of your mind. Think about this. When you're in your car and you put an address in your GPS, and you're driving and you see traffic, because we might not have one of them GPSs to tell you traffic up ahead or whatever, but you see traffic. So you decide to take a right turn because you know that GPS is going to buffer and it's going to reroute you to get you back on track where you're going. Think about all the times in your mind and in your life that those things have happened where you had to reroute. Because if you make the right turn and it reroutes and it tells you to make a left turn and you make another right turn and it has to reroute over and over, each time you go a different way than it wants to, it's rerouting you. And we follow this because we believe in that system getting us to our destination. That's where you come into play and believing in yourself to get where you need to get to, no matter how many times you have to reroute. See, we'll trust technology, but we won't trust our mentality in a lot of cases when we have to reroute. We think, oh, is this the right decision? Make the decision and stand on that decision, because even if that decision is not the right one at that time, you have an opportunity to reroute, to pivot to another decision. Don't get caught up in it. What delayed is not denied. You're sitting here like, God, what's happening? Because, we always talk to God when something's wrong, but, I'm a caveat here. We're going to go to him enough when things are going right and just say thank you. But that's for another show. Let's continue. But in that moment, you feel lost. You want to know what's happening. What's happening with your alignment? What's happening with the plan that you established? What's going wrong? You're being positioned for something better. But first, you have to let go of what was. See, even when we reroute and we repivot, we still hold on to the fact of, well, I knew I had it right this way, but I'm going to go ahead and try this way. But now that we have a new plan, we went to plan B, we still hold on to plan A. But plan B is the pivot, but we're still holding on to plan A. Don't hold on to it. Change your thinking. Change that plan B to plan A now and follow that route. Here's a quote that I found too. The pivot is painful, but it's not punishment. It's preparation. The pivot is painful, but it's not punishment. It's preparation. It's preparation for the next step in what you're trying to do in your journey. Where you been, where you at, where you going. Where you been, where you at, where you going. The journey. And let's go with the power behind the pivot. These are things that the pivot teaches us when you decide to make those pivot. Resilience. You learn you're built for more than you thought you were built for. You find a new way and you find something in you that lets you know you can bounce back and redirect from anything that's thrown your way. Perspective. Your vision is clearer. The detour shows you what the destination couldn't. The detour shows you what the destination couldn't. So you're so focused on the destination that you don't see everything around you. But when you pivot, you start opening your eyes more because you're paying more attention. Faith. You stop relying on your plan and start trusting your purpose. Now, this is the main one here. You stop relying on your plan and start trusting your purpose. See, when we talk about purpose, a lot of people get caught up because I don't know my purpose. You know your purpose. You don't have to search for your purpose. You're walking in your purpose each and every day you wake up. You just haven't realized it. Everyone around you sees your purpose. You don't see your purpose. Sometimes life makes you reroute because you were limiting yourself. Now, this is a big one here. Sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves into this box because we think we're not good enough for anything other than this box. But life makes you reroute because your potential is much greater than your doubt. Your potential is much bigger than any doubt you can cast upon yourself. Or it goes into the situation was too small. Some of us, we're bigger. We're too big for the box that we put ourselves in. So we got arms hanging out and everything else. The position you put yourself in is too small for who you are. Get out of that thinking. That person couldn't go where you're headed. Sometimes you got to leave people behind when you pivot. You might have people on the same track as you, and then you hit that pivot where you got to make a pivot. You got to leave them where they're at. Don't go back and find them. They'll catch up if their direction is the same direction as yours. It's just like anything else in life. You're going to lose people as you elevate. That plan was safe, but it wasn't stretching you. See, and this is another thing. We get in that safe zone because it's comfortable. It feels safe. But I'll ask this question. Sometimes when you're uncomfortable, don't you feel safer because you're relying on you? You're digging into your inner self and letting you know, talking to yourself, letting you know it's going to be all right. Being uncomfortable sparks something in you to dig into everything and anything you know about you in order to make it through, whether you're persevering or resilient about whatever. Digging deep into yourself opens your eyes to so many things that when you're comfortable, your vision sometimes gets blurry to the point that you get that, what do they call it, nearsighted or farsighted. I don't know how they do it with one, but you get nearsighted where you can only see this far because you're comfortable and that's all you can see. When you get uncomfortable, now you got to open your eyes and see everything because you're in unfamiliar territory. You have to be able to know what your surroundings are. We do that so often in our lives that we put ourselves in this box, as I mentioned. The pivot introduces you to the version of you that the old path couldn't reach. Let me say that for the people in the back that didn't hear this. Listen, this is clear now. The pivot introduces you to the version of you that the old path couldn't reach. It goes along with what I say with the Life Justice coaching. Awaken the best version of you. The best version of you is already in you. You just need to set that alarm clock and wake it up. Stop just going through the motions of life. Stop just going through the motions of life and start living life. But when we talk about the pivot is a part of life. You have to make these decisions, and it doesn't have to be split-second decisions. It shouldn't be. But there's going to be times where you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to look at things and say, "Ooh, I got to redirect. I got to reroute this. I got to look at a better way." And then number 4, embracing the pivot. How do you stop resisting the pivot and start owning it? How do you resist the pivot and start owning it? My older brother, Terrence, shout out. I always hear him saying, he told me something he always tells his girls: own your shit. Sorry, Ma, I had to put it out there. Own your shit. If you mess up, own it. If you do something wrong, own it. Well, this happened, is own it. That's where a lot of us fall short because we don't own our lives. And I got something coming, and I don't want to get into that right now, but there's some things coming about owning your life, but we'll get into that a little later. But own your shit. That's right. Right, wrong, and different. Own it. Own it. Stop asking why me and start asking what now. I know during George Floyd, after the murder of George Floyd and different things that were going on, I asked a question on a couple of my posts: what now? Where do we go from here? You should do that with your life. Asking why me? Why this happened to me? No, what now? What's my next step going forward? Get still. Every pivot needs pause and perspective. That's one thing we don't do. See, we make crash decisions at a time where we need to pause and look at the big picture. Look at everything that's going on and ask ourselves, why am I pivoting? What do I need to do with this pivot? And how am I going to make this pivot successful from what I was doing before to make this more successful going forward? Detach from the plan, not the purpose. And that's a big one. Do not lose focus of the purpose of why you're on this journey. It's just a plan. It's just the plan of the journey, not the purpose of the journey. It's just the plan of the journey, not the purpose of the journey. Surround yourself with real ones. Now, that's a big one. You need people who can remind you this pivot has purpose. Surround yourself with real ones. Not them fake ones, not them ones just going along for the ride, them hanger-ons and enablers and all that kind of stuff. Find real ones to go on this journey with you. Speak life over the shift. Your words matter in the waiting. That's what I talked about earlier. Rather than maintaining, I'm elevating. Your words matter during this shift. Speak it into existence. Speak to yourself. I told y'all, a couple weeks ago, look in that mirror. No, ain't nothing wrong with doing that mirror work. Look in the mirror. Talk to yourself. Talk to yourself. The challenge for this week with this, name your pivot. What's your pivot? How are you pivoting? I want you to name your pivot. Call it out, write it down, speak it out loud. What is your pivot? What is right now where you feel stagnant, where you feel stuck, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's how you parent, any of the things you feel stuck in, now is the time to identify your pivot. How are you going to pivot? Name your pivot. What season are you in? What's shifting in your season? What are you being called to release? Now, and what are you being called into? Because here's the thing. As I always tell you, I'm not a religious person, I'm a very spiritual person. But there's certain things you got to let go. You got to let go. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. I said, one of the biggest things that we do is we go through our trials and tribulations and everything, and we carry shame of things that have gone on in our life with us because we never take time to forgive ourselves. So we carry that shame through each and every step of our life. Something that happened that you did maybe when you was 20, have you come to grips with that? Was that decision that you made and the shame that you carry that goes along with that because you think people still hold you to that account 30, 40 years later? You have to forgive yourself and let that shame go during this pivot. You can't carry that shame into each and everything you do in life. Ask for forgiveness and move on. That'll stunt your pivot growth if you continue carrying that around. Say this out loud. I want you to say this out loud. I trust the pivot. I'm not stuck. I'm being sent. I trust the pivot. I'm not stuck. I'm being sent. And let the world know, and let the people around you know, pivots don't break us. They build us. Pivots don't break us down. They build us up. Name the pivot. And the last thing I want to say about this is the path may change. The path may change, but the purpose doesn't. The path may change, but the purpose doesn't. The path may change, but the purpose doesn't. Keep saying that to yourself. The path may change, but the purpose doesn't. When you go out here and you get in your car and you're going somewhere and you decide to go a different way than what the direction you thought you were going, you're still going to the same destination. You're just taking a different path. The path may change, but the purpose doesn't. So if life is rerouting you, don't panic. Don't freeze. Don't fight it. Reroute. Pivot. Pivot with power, shift with faith, and trust that sometimes the unplanned path is the one that leads to everything you've been praying for. You got this. You got this. Each of you, you're adjusting, you're evolving, and you're staying open to everything that is possible in your life. Keep pushing. The pivot. When life forces you to reroute, not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Because on that rerouting, you may find a different version of you. You may wake up something that has been hidden in you for so long that you didn't even know you were capable of. And it only got exposed and it only came to the forefront because you had to pivot. Because most of the time what we find out is we don't like to pivot because we're comfortable. We're in that space where we're comfortable, so we don't pivot to make it uncomfortable. And that uncomfortable feeling causes us to revert back to where we were at. Nah. When you pivot, stay true to the path because that path may change. I'm sorry. Stay true to the purpose, because even though your path may change, the purpose is always the reason why. Don't change that, and don't lose sight of that. The path may change, but the purpose doesn't. Stick with that.